here, but I don't know if I have a camera on. Do you see me?
I cannot see you, Jim.
Okay, I'll see what I need to do here.
Okay. Looks like we have mostly everybody. We have half of them. Oh, there's Mary Beth. Hi, Mary Beth. All right, we have Ari, Scott, Mary Beth, Mark, Rich, Jerome. Jerome was on there.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Jerome.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Okay, so we're missing one more.
All right.
You know the Wi-Fi code?
Looks like Chris is on, kinda. Oh, there you go, Jim.
Justin, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Can you hear me?
Yep,
Cool.
I can hear you now. Okay, let's, looks like Chris is 2, or what?
Oh, yeah.
You need to turn one of those off so I can fit all 12 on one screen. So you guys can share one or whatever you want to do.
That's what we were doing.
I don't know. Chris has got a picture on there.
Okay. Can't get everybody on the screen if you join.
So we are waiting for 3 more. Hey, Jerome, is your comrade gonna make it or no?
Frederick, yeah, well, it's about 11 p.m. in France right now, so he might join us. I'm not sure. I think he was up a bit earlier this afternoon. I saw an email, so hopefully he'll
Okay,
be
great.
fine.
And
doesn't
Mary
have to
Beth,
watch,
is
but-
Alejandro gonna join us too?
He is not. We didn't want to create any extra confusion with too many other people, so.
Oh, okay. Well, it would have been nice to see him, but okay. Okay, so then I think we're good to go, right? Okay, so we're gonna cast it. We're gonna cast it live to our Facebook stream or whatever it is, Facebook Live. And then you guys, if you want to go, I don't know, how you can do it, but you can go to our Facebook account and share it to yours, and then it'll stream live from your account.
So once you start streaming, then we stream, or
You just
then we share?
Yeah, it's going live right now on our page. Just give me just 1 moment. It's loading. Okay, it should be going live on Facebook in just a minute. It's setting it up right now. Go to here, right here. It's right here. Yep, it's on. Okay, we are live now on Facebook Live. So you guys, if you want to share that, you can go ahead and do that. Okay. It's a little cold
I
today.
don't think we have a Facebook page, so.
Okay. Well, you can share it if not.
Yeah, I guess.
So anyway, as you know, we all kind of do our own little barrel trials every year, and nobody really gets to experience them because we do it in kind of the privacy of our own cellars or whatnot. So especially with all the COVID stuff going on this year, I wanted to do something that was kind of fun and get the barrel reps together so you guys could anyway, be a part of this and talk about your barrels and how you feel your barrels impact the wine. And so what the trial is it's 2019 wines. It's a Syrah from right here in San Pasqual Valley. It's one of our staple wines, kind of one of our flagship wines here in San Diego County. And then we did a Pinot Noir, Santa Barbara County Pinot Noir from Orchid, which is typically got us really good scores. It's a nice warm kind of opulent Pinot, and usually it can take a little bit of wood. So I thought it would be kind of cool to do a Pinot and something a little bit bigger so that you can see the influence on the same barrel on two different wines as well. So we have 2 2019 wines and 4 of your guys' barrels for each wine, right? So we have, what I was gonna have you guys do, just so we can make it real easy, is just put all the, we'll taste the Pinots first, obviously, but just put them in alphabetical order by the cooperage. So Francois Frere, Loire, Rousseau, and Tonnerie Nationale. Now it's T and Coopers, which is actually easier to pronounce, but. So I tried to, all the barrels I buy are typically kind of in the same category. They're that kind of tight grain, medium plus, around there or whatever. I think the Allegro might be that kind of, Jerome, you can maybe talk about this when we get to it, but it's kind of in between like medium and medium plus, something like that, the Allegro.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I'd like to introduce everybody first. So let's just start at the top left with Rich Cook. I don't think I've met you in person yet.
Right. I've reviewed your wines certainly, but yeah, we've never actually bumped elbows as we do today, right?
Right. So just tell us a little bit about yourself real quick, and we'll go through everybody.
Sure. Again, it's Rich Cook. I'm a columnist and lead reviewer for winereviewonline.com. I also run several professional wine competitions in California, 5 different ones here in San Diego, and also the Monterey International up in Monterey County.
Great. Well, hey, thank you. I guess I'm next. I'm Justin Mund. You guys all know me. I grew up in Northern California. I've worked for Roy Carano, Letitia, Dama, which is now Gravino, and I've been at Orfila now for 10 years. Just this last month was 10 years. So, went to Cal Poly, and that's about it. I like making wine. It's been about 23 years or so now, so most of my adult life, and I really enjoy it. I love the product. I love the business, and I've met a lot of really cool people, just like all of you guys, and wouldn't have it any other way. So next is Mark. Mark is the owner winemaker for Domain Artifact, and he makes some really, really cool Rhone whites and Rhone reds, and I wanted to involve him in this because I think he's one of the better winemakers down here in Southern California, and he's kind of elusive, so this is one way that I can get to share some time with him. Go ahead, Mark. Oh, I think you're on mute. Unmute. Mark, you're on mute. There you go.
I'm the dinosaur here when it comes to stuff like this. Mark Robinson, Domain Artifact. I just kind of fell in love with wine back in the early 80s. All my vacations seemed to revolve around wine tasting, and we just bought this property up here in Highland Valley, and it was all citrus. It burned in the fire. We had an open slate, and I just naively started planting, and that's the easiest part of this whole thing is planting. And my first vintage was 2015. I had made 5 gallons of wine. I figured I should take Jim Hart's class, so I took his class.
Oh.
Yeah, and I was one of your stellar students there that you remember. And then Alicia, I took her vineyard management class, and that got me on, and that didn't scare me. So I ended up here. Thank you for inviting me.
All right, welcome. Thanks for coming. Next is Ari. Ari has, she went to Cal Poly too, and started working for Loire, I think, about 5 years ago or so.
I began in 2016, and Justin was actually my first client. So it was a happy coincidence.
And I really enjoy the Loire barrels and the Loire family. Ari was nice enough to take me to France to visit the forest and the cooperage and Cognac and La Rochelle and Sancerre and all over the place. So it was a really cool trip, and it was really neat to see the cooperage and how they do things. So I'll let her talk more about the barrels and all that stuff later. But if you want to just talk about, what you do, that kind of thing.
I guess a basic history of how I got into the position I'm in right now is my family has a small winery up in Northern California, and we started off as little garages. My grandfather started doing it in his garage in Davis, and it eventually evolved into a profitable winery where my dad still makes his wine and does everything up there, kind of based out of the Napa area. And he couldn't pay me to work for him, so I had to go find my own way, and this is the way I've found myself in so far. So it's a pretty good spot.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Ari.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the list is Ryan Scott. I met Ryan about 10 years ago. He was working for Witch Creek in Carlsbad, and then had moved over to my buddy's winery, Adam Caruso, and he was working there as a winemaker, cellarman, for quite a while, and now has been at Jack Simon Vineyards up in Valley Center for, I guess, the last couple of years, right? Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, I really like Ryan's wines. I liked what he did at Adam's place, and now the new wines that are coming out from Jack Simon. So yeah, take it away.
All right. Really bad timing. I'm out. There's a train, so we'll see how this goes. But yeah, I've been at Jack Simon 2 years now. We have a focus on Portuguese and Spanish varietals, a little crossover into Rhone. It's a lot of fun. I love San Diego. I grew up here, and I love the wines people are doing. I also went through the program Mark went through with Alicia and Jim, which was a lot of fun. So kind of producing wine here and kicking it back.
Okay. Cool. Thanks, Ryan. Well, thanks for joining us. All right. Next on the list, Mary Beth. Mary Beth, I met her when she was working for an artist, and has since moved over to Kean Coopers, is what they call it now, Tonnerie Nationale, and they source wood from all over, and but their cooperages, I think, is in Chile, right? So.
Yes, so hi everybody, my name is Mary Beth Stather. I am originally from Alabama, so excuse the southern accent. I started out in the wine industry actually just working in fine dining restaurants in college as a part-time job. And I moved to Chile when I graduated because I was fascinated with wine. So I found an internship in the Casablanca Valley, and that's how I learned more about the wine production. And when I moved back to the US, I moved to California so I could pursue a career in the wine industry, and I've been here for 12 years now. I worked with an artist for about 3 years. That's where I met Justin, and I actually ran into these guys at a party at Unified, and all of y'all that go to the symposium know how the parties can be fun, and you meet new people, and I actually not only met new clients, I found a new job. So it felt kind of cool to be able to kind of come back to where I started in the wine industry. Yes, our cooperage is in the Casablanca Valley of Chile. We sourced from the same awesome forest in France and the forest in the US, and we get some Eastern European oak as well. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. All right, Jerome. the grandfather of the group, right? You've probably been in the business longer than any of us, and I've been using your barrels for, gosh, what, maybe 20 years from Letitia, something like that. Yeah, you're on mute.
So yeah, here we go. It's better. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, I've been working with Jerome for a long time. I love the Russo brand. They're great barrels. And anyway, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having us. I know how tedious it was to get us all together on the same day. Yeah, but as Justin said, I've been in the business for almost 25 years. Started in France in 1994. So I was trained at the time in Charente, not very far from Leroy, by Toneri Radu, another cooperage that I used to work for a couple of years. They sent me in California in '95 to start an Americano cooperage. So that's how I got myself into the cooperage industry and business. And along the way, made a lot of friends in Northern California, where I lived almost 15 years. Relocated actually 10 years ago in Southern California. My wife is a professor at UC Riverside. So we moved down here in 2009. And I've been obviously seeing more Justin being in Orange County. And but I still travel extensively up north in Sonoma, Napa, Oregon. And I also have a small wine brand that I've been nurturing, but it's a very small, it's really emphasized here. It's only 500 cases, and it's mostly Pinot from Russian River and Oregon. Again, thank you for having me today, and I'm looking forward to taste those wines with you and getting to know everybody here.
Thanks, Jerome. Okay, next on the list, we have Chris and Alicia Bromell. They have, she makes wine for State Leon, her parents' brand, and Chris makes wine for Rancho Quijito, and Vesper is their brand together. I don't know who wants to talk, but go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, go.
Yeah, so I'm Alicia Staley. I make wine for my family, State Leon. I went to UC Davis. I've made wine now for 11 years in San Diego County. And yeah, Chris is our winemaker for Vesper, for our label, which is 100% San Diego County. We both do minimal intervention winemaking. He does more on the natural side than I do. And yeah, he makes wine for Rancho Quijito, Vesper, and then his family's brand, which is Triple B.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming. All right. Well, we got the staple from Riverside and San Diego County, Jim Hart. He's been in his dad's been in the wine industry. He was one of the first wineries that opened up in Temecula way back, I think number 5, right?
Number 4, yeah. 4.
Number 4. So,
yep.
And Jim worked he had another job. He had a real job first, and then decided to get into the wine industry. And a long time ago, I guess maybe 15 something years ago.
Yeah, I think about 2000, 2001 was when I got sucked into it full time. Before that, I was just helping at the family winery when I could.
And in the last, I think 5 years or so, you guys, you and your siblings have another winery in Julian called Vulcan Mountain Winery.
That's right. So yeah, my family has Hart Winery in Temecula. We've been there since 1980. We were the fourth winery in Temecula. Now we're the oldest. My dad was the winemaker for many years. I've been the winemaker since about 2001 as kind of assistant, and then 2008 I've been the head winemaker since then. My brother helps me there. And then I made wine up at Milagro Farm, which was in Ramona, for about 10 years. And then we bought Vulcan Mountain, which is in Julian, in 2015, my brother and I and my wife. And so Mike and I, my brother, we make the wine up here together. Keeping busy. Know all you guys mostly, just about everybody on this panel I know in one way or another. Mark, I'm sorry I didn't remember you were a student, but no wonder your wines are so good. There you go. And so it's cool to be here. I'm looking forward to tasting these wines, and really appreciate the invite, Justin. And thanks for coming by yesterday, sharing a few beers with me.
Yeah, no, that was cool. Yeah, it was good to see you. And the winery looks really good. So, okay, so everybody knows each other. So, so we have so these wines, they were in oak for about 6 months or so, depending on when they went to barrel. So they're young wines, and obviously they got a big slug of new oak. And they're 2019 barrels. I think most of you have already tasted through some of the wines. So what I'd like to do is, whoever's there or at home, or anybody else that, we're putting them in order of alphabetical order by the Coopers. So Francois Frere, Loire, Rousseau, and T.N. Coopers. And I would let's just go one by one. Unfortunately, Kobe isn't here to talk about his barrel, unless he's on here somewhere that I don't see. But yeah, it looks like he didn't make it. So it's too bad. But we can talk about his wine behind his back. How's that? Or his barrel. So I think there's definitely some barrels that are more aggressive, than others, and I think it's interesting to see what the influence is on two different wines. So let's so the first one is Francois Frere, and maybe somebody wants to offer some comments or suggestions, or just what it's more about, like, what is the impact of these barrels just early on, 6 months in barrel. What is the impact? Does it overpower the wine? Does it integrate well? Those kind of things, and I'll give my opinions, and you guys can give yours as well. So and I think most of you have tasted through most of the wines, so you can kind of see what the different impacts are of the different barrels. So Francois Frere, too bad Kobe didn't make it, but Francois Frere has really been a staple, at least for Pinot Noir on the Central Coast, for just about everybody. I mean, it's kind of just it's kind of the default barrel almost, for Pinot Noir on the Central Coast at least, and I think in other locations as well around California, and obviously is a real popular barrel in Burgundy. So I think it's nice. I think it's integrated fairly well. I mean, for a new wine, I don't think any of the barrels were very angular or offered too much barrel tannin, anything like that. But definitely some have higher impacts than others. So let's hear you guys' comments on this one.
I can start if you would like on the Francois Frere. As Justin said, it's a staple for Pinot Noir. It's usually a very consistent barrel, kind of a reference point. Here in this particular Pinot from Orchid Vineyards in the Etna Valley, I found it very spicy, having a good expression of dark fruit, molasses, very brooding. It's definitely a serious, complex wine already, but yet the tannins are fairly moderate and fine grain. I found it very juicy and balanced. Again, I think a very good package at this point of time. You see how this will evolve later on, but I believe it's a 3-year air dried as well, correct? The wood
Yeah,
is
it's a
3 years.
It's a 3-year air dry barrel. It's what they call the tight grain. It doesn't have a forest designate, but I'm assuming it's probably like Allier, Nevers, or something like that, some sort of blend, but a tight grain blend.
Right. So unlike other barrels, I didn't find too many lactones here to taste. It was really more discreet in that impact, and I think the 3-year seasoning is part of that equation. But overall, very good balance and juicy barrel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I think if I would have let, you know, if I would have kept this on this wood for too much longer, it'd probably be a little bit too, you know, it wouldn't be a good standalone wine. It would go well into the blends, but I mean, it's, I think it's compared to the Allegro barrel that's Jerome's, which is a little softer and integrates really well, really fast. I think this one is a little bit more angular for me. But, you know, in a blend, this would work fine. What about the other?
I find the oak on the back a little aggressive, like in the back end, Justin. But I think it really nicely frames the fruit. On the finish, I get quite a bit of oak, and it seems a little bit unintegrated at, you know, in the back of the palate. But the fruit really comes through nicely with this barrel, and the mouthfeel is beautiful.
I agree. So any of the other barrel reps or anybody want to comment on it?
I agree. I think it's also very well integrated. I thought it had a nice smoothness. I got a little bit of like a little bit of a cola, like a cherry cola almost, but nice dark fruits. I agree with Jerome, and yeah, I thought it was beautiful.
I'll piggyback on that because what Jim said and what the Suter said. For me, this was the most angular barrel, and it expressed the Pinot was really dark cherries. I got a bittersweet, like chocolate to it, and then the finish, I got a little bit too much oak on it, but I still like it. And it's the most brooding for me. It's the deepest of the four for me.
Yeah,
it's nice. It's very nice.
Yeah, you know, my experience with Francois Ferrers, you know, I used them a lot at Letitia, you know, for a lot of years, and then I kind of stepped back away from them a little bit because I thought that they were a little bit, it can be a little angular and a little chunky, especially for some of the lighter Pinots. This Pinot Noir is actually kind of a, you know, it's South Santa Maria Valley. It's really warm. It's opulent. It's got a, you know, it's got a little weight to it. So I think it could take a little bit more wood than a lot of the ones, especially like from Oro Grande or maybe even Edna Valley, something like that, you know. So, but I do like it. I think there's a spot in cellars, especially Pinot Noir cellars for this barrel. So anyway, anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It was the most spice forward of the barrels for me on the Pinot, and it did express more dark fruit, but it was more lush than some of them and had a nice transition to the finish, but then it was pretty grippy in the finish for me, a little drying.
Anybody? Rich, Eric, Ari?
Yeah, I'll jump in. For me, it emphasizes the earth tones in the Pinot Noir somewhat. There's a little bit of greenness to the oak at this stage, but I think it's really headed in a good direction. Right now, imparting, you know, fairly gentle brown spice with a good spicy push in the finish. I think it's got nice fine tannin. There's no sense of wood tannin in particular on the wine. It really lets the grape tannin speak. I think the toast level is good. You know, it's adding some of that spice without overshadowing the fruit. And I think that's really headed into a good place.
Yeah, I agree. So anybody else, or you want to move on? All right, you want to talk about?
I find Francois Ferrer to be a very pretty barrel, and I know it's known for being a little stronger, but I think it really does integrate well into a blend, especially when it's only 30 to whatever percentage of the wine itself. And that's the fun part about your job, all the winemakers' jobs, is that you get to pick the best component and put that into the masterpiece that it becomes.
Yeah, I would say, you know, new French oak in this wine would be a little less than 20%, and then kind of just tapered down 1, 2, 3, 4 year barrels, and then a bunch of neutral. So yeah, the blends together, and it's actually it's nice. I think it's the right amount of new wood for this fruit at least. But it's anyway. I like Francois Frere. I mean, it's not my favorite, but but it is definitely a good barrel, and it's very popular, especially with Pinot producers. So I was glad to show it. So what do you think we move on to the next one? The next one is Loire, right?
Yeah.
So let's Ari, maybe you can talk about your barrel. What barrel this is? This is a so this is the VLS. I think was from another one. I think that was a different, but it's the Loire Harmony, and it's a 3-year air dried barrel as well.
So Loire is a cognac-based cooperage. It's right next door to Taranceau, Seguin Moreau, and a lot of those other producers. The neat thing about this cooperage in particular, Loire, is that the family that owns it started off as a wood-producing family. So they would be the ones who would actually source the staves and then sell them to the different cooperages. And they began this about 6 generations ago. So that was their main business before they got into cooperages. And then in let's see, I want to say the 1980s, Martel actually separated, Martel Cognac separated from their cooperage that they had in-house and sold it to the family that did the stave sourcing for them, and that's what created Loire. So Loire has been around for about 30 years, actually a little longer than that, maybe 35 years now, and they're sourcing about 60% of the wood that they produce for barrels for Martel cooperage, but they also are now capable of selling barrels in North America, South America, Australia, and wherever else people might need some barrels. So in a regular barrel that you would see come from Loire, we're using mixed forests, so kind of a focus in the center of France in the Betrange, Navarre, Allier, Trancé area, but we're looking for consistency rather than you know, a specific forest where, like grapes, you might have a really great year and then you might have a really bad year. So overall consistency, and from there, just tightness of grain. So that's how we break our barrels up and kind of market them to the different winemakers. We have a medium grain, a tight grain, and an extra tight grain. The Harmony falls into that tight grain, and the extra seasoning really gives it a little bit more finesse than you might see out of one of the medium grain, or just a fine grain that doesn't have that extra aging. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, yeah, thanks. It's really interesting going from the Francois Frere to this barrel. You know, it's definitely different. You know, and I like all of them. You know, so I don't really have a favorite. I think they're all interesting. They're all different. It's just really, it's interesting to me to see what the impact is on the wines, and you know, all pretty similar barrels too. So I like this. I think it's got Loire always has a little bit more chunk, and maybe that's just because it's kind of a little, it's more of a, you know, they come from a cognac background. And by the way, I wanted to kind of mention something too that Ari didn't, but the Loire is in the Charleroi group, who does also Saury and Hermitage, which are also really nice barrels as well, right? Ari. Yeah. So anyway, I think all these barrels offer a lot of spice. This one, I really like the nose on this. It really comes across like it doesn't bury that really nice warmth that Pinot has, especially from this vineyard. And I really like that about this barrel. I feel like on the palate, it sometimes it's a little bit more aggressive, but the nose is beautiful. And I've always liked that about the Loire barrels. Anybody else want to comment?
It's interesting, Justin. When I opened these bottles about a half an hour before we started here. And when I tasted through them, honestly, just at the beginning of this session here, this one had the most prominent oak and the most, and it was way pronounced, and it was my least favorite. But now the bottle's been open for about 35 minutes and the wine's been sitting here and the oak has backed off and it's integrated a lot more. And I'm getting super pronounced chocolate and coffee notes from the wine that I didn't get when I first tasted it. And now I'm really loving this barrel. It's cool because when I first tasted it, the oak was just in my face and it's backed off just sitting here.
I've had the similar experience because I use some Ari's barrels. I only buy a few barrels a year, so I don't get the luxury of tasting multiple in a lot. But there's times where I'm like, oh, this is like the one barrel I've used in this lot, and I do the same thing. Oh, it's over oaked, and then I taste it, let it sit in a glass, and it opens up a lot more. So I think I think it's part of the.
Yeah, I mean, I really like this barrel. It's I think it can be a little bit more aggressive sometimes on the palate, but the nose is awesome to me. I mean, that's really that. And it's kind of bits and pieces, right? I mean, that's what we do. It's kind of like the barrels are kind of like a spice rack, right? We just kind of, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, sprinkle some smelly stuff over here and whatever, you know what I mean? And it's not, and we all know, we're all winemakers. Even the barrel producers are all winemakers. Sometimes you kind of just got to roll with whatever you got, and, you just, you might think what you're doing is right. And then you second guess yourself and you say, maybe that wasn't right. And then down the road, just like Jim said, 15 minutes later, it's a totally different animal. So, yeah, it's an imperfect science to say the least, but, I really like this barrel. I think it's a nice compliment to the fruit. So. Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I can comment on it. This is definitely a big barrel. But it's also, I think, one of the most dynamic one. I think from entry to finish, it has a lot of valley and peaks. I like the red fruit nose and the volume, the spices, but also I think the downside of this was the little bit more lactone and oak impact. It lifted the fruit very well. I found that the tannins in the finish to be a bit, rustic and chalky, but the overall impression of the wine is just a very dynamic, very, very impactful. But I think the downside of the impact, doesn't really bother me as much as it did initially. I think the wine settled down in the glass, as some of you said, and it becomes, I think, a nice component in the blend.
I agree. Anybody else want to comment on this barrel?
I liked how this one seemed to push some of the fennel, dry earth character of the fruit almost to the point of some pepper there. I think it really, thinking of it as a blending element from a palate to draw from, it's going to be a really interesting note to add in to the blend because it gets at some of those other kinds of characters outside the fruit that really sort of pushes that fennel, dry earth, even a little bit of damp earth. There's just a lot going on and the layers keep bouncing back and forth.
Yeah, I agree with Rich a lot. I'd love to do a Pinot with this as part of the blend. Got a little bit of celery seed on the nose. It's getting those nice green notes that Pinot can get sometime. And it's covered up by oak so often. Almost celery leaf and rhubarb on the palate and a hint of green peppercorn. Really subtle and elegant. Has a nice kind of mid-palate finish where some of the other oak is more on the back end, and it can add a nice fuller finish to a blend.
Yeah, good comments. This is a really, for me, this is for Pinot Noir. Well, I'll say Loire in general is pretty good bang for your buck, right? You got a ton of oak, and especially the first year. And this is a barrel for Pinot Noir that I typically like as a 1-year-old barrel. It does, I think, for other varietals, it's, you know, bigger reds and so forth. The first year is awesome. I kind of like this barrel second fill better than I do first. But it's still a really nice barrel, and I think your guys' comments are right on. So, anybody else? Mary Beth or Mark or Ari?
I really liked the structure. At the beginning, I did feel like it was a little tight, but I agree with Jim. Once it opened up a little bit, it was a lot more aromatic and had some really nice structure to it. I thought it was a beautiful barrel.
Anybody else? Mark, Ari?
Yeah, I lost my internet connection, so I didn't really get to hear what anybody said, but I agreed with what I heard. I like what it does to this the Pinot. It put it right down the fairway, if you want to use a golf analogy. I thought this was very, very perfuming at first, and then it got muted. I too got like a fennel-y thing like Rich got on this, and a celery note, rhubarby also. I wouldn't put that those terms, but that's what as soon as I heard it, that's what I was thinking. I think, and now I'm beginning to think, Justin, exactly what you said. I think this would be, it's a little overwhelming, but I think second fill would just be awesome, because I like the nose on this. It's very perfuming. I like what this does. It's on the finish, it leaves interesting, it coats my tongue. It's kind of an interesting thing, but I like this barrel. I'm interested in something like this. This is beautiful.
You're right. It has that real kind of silky smooth texture to it. And I don't know, I'm not a barrel guru per se, so maybe Jerome or somebody like that can say, maybe tell us why that happens. That real smooth, kind of silky smooth texture in barrels, and not all barrels, but some, and some have more than others. And you guys know what I'm talking about? That very like almost viscous kind of on the palate thing. And I don't know the science behind the barrel, so I can't really talk about that.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the texture, the creaminess, and the lactone content in the barrel. That's why I don't necessarily always recommend the 3-year air dry, because you're losing a little bit of that sweet and lactonic character, which pushed to an extreme can be too much. Like we've seen in Hungarian oak or American oak, where the lactones overwhelm the fruit. But I think the 2-year air dried, I think we'll taste probably that in the Allegro next. You need the lactone to optimize the texture, and it's a perception of texture. I don't think the wine itself maybe is not necessarily more textured than another, but yeah, that's sort of the idea behind the what you're alluding to.
Well, thank you. Who didn't comment on it? Maybe Ari?
I just have a little feedback on the comment of everybody saying at first it's one of those, holy cow, what the heck is this oak? It's almost a little too much. And I actually hear that from more people than yourselves. And it's funny because sometimes people worry and they think, maybe I need to take my wine out of this barrel. Maybe I need to, modify something that's going on. And really, I've only worked with it for the last 5 seasons now, but my dad actually was using Loire before I became on board with them. And this was always sorry. Oh, this was always, he always said the Loire barrels were your be patient barrels, where if you open it and it goes, oh my gosh, that's way too much oak, it's overpowering the wine. Patience is really the best I can tell you what you need to do with the wines in these situations. So a little bit off the top, the first 2 months, 3 months, up to 6 months, it can be a little strong, but really exactly what everyone has said. If you are willing to wait it out, I promise you it won't ruin your wine.
Well, that's a plus.
We hate when that happens.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ari, and really nice barrel. So appreciate it. Okay, so let's move on to the third one. That would be the Russo Allegro. This is a barrel. This is probably my favorite barrel from Russo, and I've been using Russo probably longer than any other cooperage here, at least. And I love this barrel. I think it's always one of my favorites, especially for Pinot Noir. And it's just it integrates really well. I feel like it really pushes the fruit out of the glass. You know, it really kind of helps the nose, I think, a lot. And anyway, I'll let Jerome talk about the barrel, the wood, the cooperage, and whatever he wants to.
Yes, thank you for this very nice introduction. Yeah, I've been working with the Russo family since 1998. So they've been with me for 25 years. It's a very nice family, very still family-run cooperage. They're fairly small compared to the larger cooperages like François Frère or Dargaud Jéglet or Raymond. They make maybe 10,000 barrels a year. They started in 1954, mostly refurbishing and renovating larger tanks and casks. So that's how Mr. Russo in the early 50s started his business. His son took over about 10, 15 years later and started the barrel production. And to this day, they still build beautiful casks and tanks. Some of them are coming this year again. From basically 10 hectoliters to 100 hectoliters. So that's really their expertise. With this particular Allegro barrel and the range associated with it, which is Piano Allegro Forte, it's sort of a counterpoint to their traditional range, which some people perceive as being a bit too impactful, too structured, and needed actually too much time to integrate. You know, a lot of the wineries these days don't have the luxury of aging 18 months or 20 months their Pinot. They need to rotate their wine after maybe 6, 8, 9 months. So Russo started this range, Piano Allegro Forte. That's sort of early integration, like a primer integration in March, April. 6 months in the barrel, the barrel got to be integrated. So they're not using any steam bending or water bending like Hermitage or Dargaud Jéglet. They're still using the traditional fire bending, but they're seasoning the staves a bit differently. They're going to spray water extensively for about 6 months on those particular staves before they go into production. So it's the green staves arrive on their yard and they start spraying, you know, very extensive, you know. So that's, I think, it enables the wood of the pores of the wood to open up, release the tannins, and as a result, I think you have a much softer oak expression. So that's sort of what I felt here in this particular sample. I think one of the common descriptor of Russo barrels, basically the aromatics, you know, is sort of the brown sugar, the molasses. And in this particular barrel, I think the integration shows also a very nice texture and creaminess. It's not necessarily a barrel that is the most complex barrel out there, but I think it really emphasizes the texture, the creaminess, and the early integration. So I think some of the other barrels we tasted today, you know, I think can complement this barrel. I think it's a good foundation. And then, you know, in terms of acidity, in terms of juiciness, or structure, you can find your other ingredients with the other barrels, you know, but that's sort of my primary comment on this.
I agree. I think it's definitely the most integrated and the softest of the bunch, you know, and you know, I've kind of stopped. I've stopped kind of shopping around to other cooperages because I just want to know what the barrels that I buy are going to do to the wines that I have, you know, and you know, I know, you know, this is kind of the core crew of cooperages that we use, and I feel like I know the barrels pretty well now, and so I can put them in the right places, And it's such a hard thing to do, you know, when you don't really know a barrel and you're like, oh, I don't know, should I throw it at some Tempranillo or a Sangio or, you know, Pinot or whatever, you know? I mean, it's kind of like, you know, you kind of just roll the dice sometimes. But, you know, with all these barrels that we're tasting today, I feel like I understand them pretty well, and I have a better, I can be more dangerous. Let's put it that way with those. So, anybody else have any comments on the Rousseau barrel?
It integrates beautifully. I mean, this is of these 4 wines, this is the one that this bottle would be the one that I go, I'm taking this home for dinner. You know, it really integrates really nicely right now. So, and it's just hitting all the notes on the Pinot in kind of the right places. So all these other barrels, they feel like they're a little bit of a work in progress at this point in time. But I think obviously you're going to blend some older oak into this wine. So maybe this particular treatment wouldn't work with a mixture of older oak, but by itself, it just shines to me.
Yeah.
Sonoma Rousseau were the first barrels I ever tasted. We tasted through our Sonoma Pinot. And so it brings back memories of like very pure, you know, without like saying the overpowering spice. I'm sure of some of the other barrels.
Yeah, I agree. Mark or anybody?
As I'm not a Pinot maker, but the closest thing I could come to it is Grenache. My vines are only 10 years old, so every year they're changing. But if I was going to, and I'm probably going to, put my Grenache in a barrel, it's going to be this one. It just brightens it up. I had a Frenchman tell me that, you know, I'm American because I grew up with Fruity Pebbles and things like that. So I have a sweet tooth in me. And this just hits all the bells and whistles for me. I think my Grenache is different every year because it's changing. But for my Grenache, this would work perfectly. I mean, I'd probably use another barrel also as to get the complexity, but this is my sweet spot. I really like this barrel.
Ari or Jess or Rich?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'd agree that it's really soft on adding its own character and really more about a textural influence to the wine. It's really letting the black cherry and the cola notes or brown sugar, you know, whatever you want to call that zone, speak out really clearly. It gives a nice creamy texture from beginning to end. It's a very attractive wine on its own right now. Like Mark was saying too, the idea that you know, we're raised on Coca-Cola here in the United States versus having wine with lunch from the age of 6 in France. It's a whole different kind of a way of coming around to these things. So this makes for a very domestically friendly package, let's say.
Yeah, almost confectionery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a nice sweetness on the end that just kind of elevates it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, you know, for a new barrel, I mean, everything that everybody said is right on. I mean, it integrates really fast. It's got a really good it's got a really good way to really lift the nose. You know, it's almost like vault. I really love that about this barrel, especially first year. You know, I would say, you know, some of the other barrels, you know, for Pinot Noir, that's something pretty light, you know, and I tried to pick the biggest Pinot Noir that I had in the cellar for this trial because it's new wood, right? So I wanted to kind of make it shine, you know. So, but yeah, this is a really cool barrel. Integrates really fast, and obviously one of my favorites. Does anybody else want to comment? I think we have maybe 1 or 2 more people.
I do like oh, I'm sorry, Ari. I do like a little bit of creaminess, a little bit of caramel, but it definitely makes a nice integration with the wine, and feel like there's a nice brightness and freshness and like juiciness to it. So I think it's a very beautiful, beautiful barrel.
Justin, I just made a cuvee out of the Francois Fleur and the Rousseau, and it kind of it kind of works.
Hey, the only one that can blend my minds is this guy. No, just kidding. I'm joking. Joking. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, no. Yeah. And obviously all these barrels are going into one blend. So they're just all kind of pieces of the puzzle. And but I like them all for different reasons. And you know, obviously I invited you guys on here and did the trial because these barrels are all real special to me, and they work. And that's the ultimate goal, right? So, Ari or anybody else that hasn't commented?
I much agree with everybody's comments on this wine. It's kind of that beautiful, elegant, ace up your sleeve barrel that I really think pairs beautifully with this wine and this vineyard. And I think it's a really nice match. I think you did a great job pairing that, Justin.
Thank you, and thank you, Jerome, for the barrels. Okay, so I think we got everybody on that one. The last Pinot Noir barrel is the Tien cooperages. So this is actually a really interesting barrel, and I'll let Mary Beth talk a little bit more about it. It was they were very nice. They kind of gave me one barrel, and then I bought another one, you know, just to fill up the rack. But this is a really cool barrel, and I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, so this is a fairly new barrel that we have added to our program. It's from the Fontainebleau forest, and it's actually seasoned for 4 years. So we feel that the longer seasoning makes more elegant, softer tannins. It's an extra fine grain, and we have actually toasted this in our patented convection process. So we use a unique style of toasting. We do the traditional fire toasting, and we also offer convection toasting barrels. So it's hot air that is a more consistent and repeatable method of caramelizing the natural sugars in the wood. And it's actually 4 hours of toasting. So it's a very long, slow process, but it really gets deep into the wood, so you do get more out of the second use as well. So it's just one of our kind of, I guess, exciting new projects that we have to work with the Fontainebleau forest, which is just south of Paris. So that's a very well-known forest for oak barrels. And yeah, so this is our long convection medium plus toast.
So I'll just start real quick. I really like this. It's very complete. It's very round. I think it's there's a ton of wood on the nose that I think kind of mutes the fruit a little bit. But on the palate, it's really round and complete. And that's what I really like about this barrel. That compared to some of the other ones, you know, it's got that real kind of complete mouthfeel that I really like out of this barrel. So I'll let whoever else comment on
it. I think, because you said the word complete, I'm going to jump in here. To me, this barrel, I think in terms of ageability, if you were to taste this wine in 2 or 3 years, I think this wine would be the most complete wine. It gives you everything. The mouthfeel already, for me, was the most full. You're right, on the nose, it's a little too much oak, so it mutes the fruit, but I think after 2 or 3 years, that would kind of go away. And this Pinot, by the way, I would be the happiest winemaker in the world if I made this Pinot. Yeah, I think they marry perfect together. I think in 5 years, if we should be kind of fun, by the way, hint, hint, wink, wink, if we could redo this in 2 or 3, 4 years, 5 years, I think this would be my favorite wine. It gives me everything.
And definitely the tightness and the fineness of the grain of the French oak will definitely give it kind of like a more oak impact, but the longer that you age it, it's gonna integrate better. So you definitely get more of a oakiness like at the beginning of the aging, but we definitely recommend to age your wine at least a year in this barrel, minimum a year.
Hey Jim, you should mute your thing.
What's that? What's that?
You should mute your thing.
I don't even know how to mute it. You hear my kids' cartoons? My grandkids are upstairs with the cartoons on. Can you hear them?
Yeah, a little bit.
Hey guys, turn the TV down. Sorry. It's course quarters up here. I'm up in the apartment in Julian, and they're right here. They've been helping me do chemistry all day, so now I'm letting them watch a little TV.
If you click on your little square, there's like a little mute button.
I'm doing it on my phone because I couldn't I couldn't get my laptop to. For some reason, I don't have the current version of the software on my laptop. Guys, turn that off, please. I'm sorry, you guys. Bear with me.
It's okay.
I'll make them go outside and play.
Let's see. So, hey, Rich, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I agree with Mark. I think initially I got almost all just fruit out of this glass, but as it aired out, the spice from the wood started to come on, and I think it really it keeps a nice plush feel without adding dominant spice, but the spice just keeps pushing. It keeps pushing, and the toastiness comes out a little bit more with more airing. The longer it sits in the glass, especially on the nose, the more I get a forward toasty note. But on the palate, it's really nicely integrated already, I think, and it's a nice accent to the Pinot. Again, talking about blending, I think if I blended the Rousseau and this one, I'd have a miracle glass going.
Yeah. Really, really pretty mouthfeel. I really like that about this barrel.
It really is. It accentuates the kind of musty, smoky, spicy things that you get in some Pinots. And I think in a blend, this would just totally add to the overall blend that you put together when you get all these barrels and obviously some older stuff in there. And I figured out how to mute the thing so I can get the cartoons off the show.
It's okay. You're fine.
Yeah, I will concur with Jim. In addition to everybody's comments, I think what I really found out about here initially, that's sort of the primary reaction when I smell and tasted the wine, was the sort of graphite and earthiness in the nose. That could be a function of the toasting or the wood selection, but I think mostly for the toasting, and which is very interesting because again that I always like those Pinot from Côte de Nuit that has that sort of earthy forest floor and graphite quality. And I think this is the barrel here in the panel that emphasize this character of the Pinot the most. So, I think some, the François Frère was probably the jack of all trades, if you will, having, different aspects and packaging this nicely. The Rousseau emphasizing the texture, the Leroy, the structure. This one really, I think in terms of aromatics for me, that's what got me to this, really like this barrel. It's just the little bit unusual aromatic profile, which I think you don't find it too often in Pinots, but when I find it, I always find it interesting and intriguing and a little bit out of the ordinary.
Well said.
Yeah.
I think he's pretty spot on with kind of targeting the best elements in every glass. And I think if you go back through and taste them all, I have them poured out in front of me. And if you go through and taste them and smell them all, they've all significantly changed and evolved and really become something that we might have talked about, and now that's not present any longer, or it's softened, or, I mean, it's a really neat thing to continue going back through as time goes on to see what each one does. And I think this last one in particular, Mary Beth's, was really, it had that kind of oakier upfront character, and now it's really softened and it's beautiful and it's really opening up.
Let's see, Ryan or Chris?
Sure, you got it. I agree a lot on the earthy, more slightly meaty aspect of this barrel that it's representing, but there's also a nice kind of white tea undercurrent that's coming through the whole length of the palate and sort of softens those more aggressive notes, as well as the oak. It does come off fairly toasty, but it kind of adds a little, like, I don't know, callback balance there.
Yeah, and yet, Ari had a really good point. You know, they've all kind of evolved. You know, in the glass, I've had mine open for about a half hour or so, or no, an hour now, or more than an hour, and about a half hour before we started this thing. And yeah, they're really all kind of softening out and getting a little bit more round, and it's really interesting how new barrels tend to do that. I think a little bit, you know, more than not new barrels, you know. So it's an interesting exercise to do and really see how quickly they change. But I think those were all really good comments. All very nice barrels in their own right, and for the differences and the similarities, and really neat. And I think this was a good Pinot to use because it's a little bit on the you know, it's that South Santa Maria Valley, really warm, opulent kind of Pinot. So you really see what the impact of the oak is, you know, versus something that's maybe a little bit leaner and not so chunky, you know. So, anybody have any comments on the total flight or favorites? You know, observations, anything?
I tell you,
In terms of the whole flight.
yeah, from my perspective as somebody who's just on the enjoyment end of the spectrum when it comes to wines, you know, dealing with specifically with finished products, I think it's got to be a real pleasure, and at the same time a real headache to go through trying to narrow down what you want to have in your palate when you go to blend palette of things to choose from. And I think this is a really nice selection of barrels across the board that gives you a lot of opportunity to come up with, you know, maybe even 2 or 3 different blends that would work really well and bring out different stylistic elements, you know, sort of at will. It's a really nice set to be able to work with.
So every few years I make about 50 cases of my own little label, you know, and from this vineyard, and I did it about 3 years ago, and this year I'm gonna do it again, and it ended up being a brand new Allegro barrel and a once used Loire. And that's what I had because I didn't have this Fontaine Bleu barrel, and I didn't have Kobe's Francois Frere. So, but those were the 2 barrels that I used for my blend. It was a brand new Allegro and a once used Loire. So that was my blend for my blend. So, but yeah, I thought all of them showed really well. They're all very well made barrels construction wise. I mean, I've never had any problems with, you know, very few problems with leaking or, you know, warped heads or anything, you know. I mean, they're all very well built. And I think they all showed really well. So thank you guys for comments on this flight. You want to move into the Syrahs now? Yeah. Okay, so let's do the same thing. For the Syrahs, let's just do it alphabetical. Francois Frere, Loire, Rousseau, and T and Coopers. Okay. Oh, by the way, Kobe texted me. He doesn't have internet, so he couldn't join us. So, but he's watching on Facebook Live. So if you wanna give him a hard time or whatever, you can. I think most people know Kobe, right? I know Jerome and Mary Beth. No, you guys don't know? You know him though, right? All right. Kobe.
He died in a health.
Yes. Yes, I do.
You know Kobe. Yeah. Kobe went to Cal Poly SLO with me back in the late '90s, early 2000s, and was the winemaker for Claiborne and Churchill for tons of years, and has his own label called El Lugar, and is the rep for Francois Frere in, I think, Central and Southern California. Okay, so now we have the same barrels with a 2019 Syrah from our property. So definitely a bigger wine, right? And it'll be interesting to see the effects of the barrels on this wine compared to the Pinot. So the first one is the Francois Frere barrel. You can talk a lot of trash about the barrel because Kobe's watching, but he can't say anything. So
Take advantage of it.
right, exactly. So anyway, Francois Frere again is kind of a staple barrel for a lot of people. Typically, I think of it more as a Pinot Noir barrel, but I've used it for just about everything, and it's a pretty good all-around barrel. I mean, it's kind of the workhorse, like I think Jerome said. And so anyway, I'll just start with whoever. You want to start at the top? We can start with Rich and just kind of give your thoughts. And it's interesting to taste the same barrel in a different wine, same amount of time in oak, 6 months, but just a different wine, that's bigger. So go for it.
Yeah, I think on the Syrah, where in the Pinot, I'd said that it had a little bit of green tone to it. It emphasized the earth tones. I think with the Syrah, it really adds a nice upfront spice character that the Syrah is up to. It's sort of the fruits pushing that green down a little bit. And then mid palate, you just get that big burst of really nice savory Syrah. And it just keeps going, nicely integrated spice along with that fruit through a nice long finish. It's got some good richness, really easy grip on the end. I think that works really well.
I think so too. I think you're exactly right, man. It's a bigger wine. I love the nose. I love how it doesn't really mask all that big, ripe fruit. And on the palate, it almost has like kind of this wine is bone dry, but it almost kind of gives it a little bit of almost a sweetness to it that I really like, and really round and great body. And, if I had 20 barrels of this, it'd probably be a super big hit,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that little cocoa powder sweetness on the end is really nice with the after that savory, meaty mid palate. Really, really nice wine.
Let's see. Maybe you want to start Ari, maybe? Let's go from left to right. Unless you want to go like Hebrew, we can go right to left.
I mean, when I started pouring the wine into these glasses, the color is just magnificent. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm kind of, I guess, looking at the wine rather than the barrels, but do you have the chemistry on this, Justin? Like the pH, TA, VA, any of those sorts of things off the top of your head?
Yeah, the VA is about 0.07 grams per 100 mils. The pH is actually really low. Most of the wines that come off of this ranch, even though it's kind of odd from Southern California being in a warm climate, the pHs are really low. So this is like a 3-4 something pH, and the TA is in the 6s.
I think it's a really beautiful wine, and it integrates well with Kobe's barrel. It's got really nice mouthfeel, and there's tannins that are present and long lasting, but it's not overpowering. They're very elegant. They're very pretty, really. And I think it's a really nice match, wine to barrel.
I think it'd be really interesting to have another barrel, another wine, like maybe a Bordeaux or something that's a little greener, to see how this would act. Because it's just so big and fruity, you know. It would be interesting to see something that was a little bit more, you know, Bordeaux-esque, you know, a little on the greener side, to see what the barrel would do with that. But I really like this wine. I think Rich is right. I mean, this is, man, if I had 20 barrels of this, it would just be 100% New French oak wine, you know, and it'd be great. Anybody else? Ryan? Somebody? Or are you done? All right. Oh, okay. Ryan, you want to go?
Yeah, you got it. Sorry, I didn't know where I was in the little Brady Bunch thing here. I'm always first.
Yeah, we all need to go like this.
Yeah.
All of it's squares.
And I think every screen's in a different order too, so.
Oh,
Yeah,
is it?
no, that's what I ran into here. No, I agree. It was really spice forward. The oak kind of hits on the mid palate, and right after it hits, it has a smooth transition into the finish, and it just lingers, man. It just keeps going and going, and you don't even realize when it's gone. It just sort of fades away. That's really nice. I mean, that's one of the attributes I'm always after. It really makes you want to have another glass.
It seems to drive this particular glass. I'm tasting them all against one another, and I don't know if it's the oak is just better integrated or it's just not as in your face. But this is just like it accentuates this juicy fruit, red fruit character that just like totally pops with this barrel as compared to the other one. So I mean, in a blend, you would just love to have this bright fruit come out, and it softens the middle nicely as well. I really like this barrel with this wine.
Mary Beth, you want to talk about it?
Yes, I agree. I thought the Francois Ferrer was delicious. It has a very nice long finish, very silky, integrates very well. Yeah, sorry to miss you, Kobe, but good job.
Yeah, he's watching from Facebook Live. So.
Yeah, this is delicious. This is awesome. I really love the cherry, the dark fruits. This is beautiful. And then I think the wine is awesome. So this has been in barrel for about 6 months as well?
Yeah, so I bottled these from barrel before the first rack on 5/1. So okay. It's a little over a month in bottle.
Okay.
And it was about, you know, went to barrel in, let's say, October, November. So, 6 months, more or less, something like that.
Yeah, I think for 6 months, this is awesome. It integrated very well. It's beautiful, beautiful wine, beautiful barrel.
Thank you. And yeah, it's nice, really nice barrel. Thanks, Kobe. All right, Jerome.
Oh yeah, I don't think I have anything to add except maybe just one flow. You have to find a flow. So I'm the one, but it's and I was tasting this particular sample against the others, but I really like the sort of volume and the integration of the oak in related to the fruit. I just found it a little bit more angular maybe than others, in the sense that it's I'm not even sure if this is the barrel or just the tannins of the wines that are a bit chewier, but I just found just a little bit more of that chewy angular quality, especially in the finish. But otherwise, very beautiful. I think probably the barrel that enhanced the red fruit quality of the fruit the most. Others will enhance the darker element, but this, I think, as far as the freshness and the perception of acidity, I think the one that really lifts the fruit the most.
Yeah, I really apologize. After I did this thing, I realized that I should have probably bottled up a neutral barrel for all you guys, so that you could have just seen it as a control, But I figure we're all professionals. We can kind of deduct what's going on. But next time that I do this, I will have a control as well. Maybe a stainless barrel or just a neutral barrel or something like that, so you can kind of compare the fruit on its own. Chris or Alicia?
You want me to talk about Syrah? No. In Central Coast, we use a lot of Francois for our barrels, right? Because it's like cold climate, like Biennacido, Syrah, and whatnot. And they were always really fun. And I love the integration that they did and the respect of the fruit. And being that this is a warmer climate Syrah and it's a lot juicier, it's fun to see what it's doing with that fruit and still respecting it. So it's great to see that, like, the cooperage, like, across the board, it has this integration with Syrah that really works. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think I get what Jerome's saying, that it's like a little bit disjointed sometimes, this barrel, and maybe it is the fruit, or maybe it's the tannin from the fruit or whatever. You know, this wine is gonna, you know, I racked it, and it went back to barrel, some different barrels, some new barrels, some different stuff. But you know, this is a wine that'll be in barrel for 18 months. So yeah, no, it's got a long ways to go. But I think it's really interesting to see what's happening right now with it, and it's a big fruit bomb, you know. So I thought it was kind of interesting to see what, you know, if the oak would bury the fruit, you know, or if it helps it, or whatnot. So
so far it hasn't.
I'm sorry.
And it seems to almost just be playing alongside of it, which is really fun to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice wine. Thanks, Kobe. Anybody else want to comment on it, or did we get everybody? I think we got everybody.
What I find fascinating, because I really am, I don't really know much about barrels, so that's why I was surprised that Justin asked me about this, because my fruit is so young that I'm afraid to put it in a lot of new oak. What I find fascinating is this barrel was with the Pinot, it brought out a lot of weaknesses, but with the Syrah, it just brings out all the strengths. It's kind of fascinating. I find what Chris just said, it plays, and he said it perfectly, it plays alongside with the fruit, and it's gonna be a fun, I hope you keep this.
My wine and weaknesses?
No. The Pinot, it was disjointed with the Pinot, I thought. I wrote down that the Pinot was totally different, but with Syrah, this is like one of the best barrels for Syrah. But for the Pinot, I didn't appreciate it as much because it overpowered the Pinot. But with Syrah, it just plays nicely alongside of it, as Chris put. This is a beautiful barrel for Syrah. And it's opened my eyes to barrel use. I'm pretty much, I don't really appreciate barrels that much. And now all of a sudden this day is really changing my outlook on things. I think this is beautiful with your fruit.
Well, you have 4 really good barrel reps here too. Well, well, I guess we only have 3, but yeah, Kobe's watching the 3.5. Yeah. So yeah, I really like it. So I think that was Jim. Did you comment on this at all? Or?
Yeah, no. I just it just accentuates the red fruit. It just on this barrel, it's just this Syrah becomes a fruit bomb. I'm really interested to hear the comments on these other barrels because there is so much difference, especially when you go to the next one. I'm just chomping at the bit to talk about the Leroy here. You know?
Yeah.
It's just totally different in that barrel.
Yeah, I actually really like Ari's barrels, the Leroy stuff for Syrah. I think it, you know, I think it's a pretty good barrel for that. So you guys want to move on to that one now? The Leroy barrel. see that. I think everybody commented on this one. So really interesting to see the barrel's influence on the Pinot Noir versus the Syrah, though, right? How it affects it, you know? It's pretty interesting, yeah. It makes us seem not so barrel wine savvy sometimes. But it's a really cool experiment. So thanks for doing this. So yeah, let's move on to the Loire barrel. I really like that kind of that chunkiness, that char that Loire has, especially on bigger wines. During the first year, we already kind of noted that Loire takes a little bit longer to integrate, you know, in some of the lighter wines. So I'll have RA talk about the barrel and what she thinks about this paired with this wine.
So I like to smell through these wines first before I even go into sipping them. And then I really try to do it as impartially as I possibly can. And since I've been sitting here,
Are you working on your homework?
trying to go through them just to see how they've evolved. I mean, the Rousseau barrel I thought was super aromatic and perfumey, and then that one's kind of since changed. And the Loire is really interesting because I think it has that finesse that I was hoping it would have maybe a little more of on the Pinot in the Syrah. So it's got that really pretty kind of floral note, that kind of fresh fruit on the nose. I get a lot of violets and a little bit of licorice, a little bit of just light anise. And then in the palate, it has kind of silky, softer tannins. They're definitely there, but they're not overpoweringly so. And I think it makes a nice marriage together. And I was looking at the bottle just now, and it looks like a medium plus. Is that what you had written down, Justin?
Yeah, it's medium plus.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm always a little, I like to err on the side of less is more, but I think a medium plus really does work well with this wine. So I think, Justin, you did a beautiful job.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. You know, Syrah is really a lot of the ranch is Syrah here, and it's a really good varietal for I think where we're at here. It's definitely that warm climate, big fruit bomb style. But I think this barrel, and actually all the barrels, I think work pretty well with this wine. I think maybe I can have maybe some of the other people comment on it. And I mean, I guess bigger wines with new barrels integrate faster, right? And isn't that the kind of the trick, right? I mean, you kind of want to match your wood to the wine and not overpower it. And if it's matched up right, then it integrates quicker, I guess. Would that be a safe thing to say? Let's talk with the other reps first. And then we'll get to all the other comments. So how about Mary Beth? What do you think about that?
About Loire with the Syrah specifically?
Well, I mean, just what your comments are about the wine, and do you think what I was kind of saying, like, you know, bigger wines integrate faster with new wood?
I think it definitely depends on like the source of the wood as well. So I feel like the American oak gives like a faster impact, like a more aromatic impact, and then kind of slowly integrates better in with the wine. And then I feel like the French oak will give like a softer aromatic, and then kind of like integrate better over a longer time with the wine. And also it depends on the variety that you use as well. So there's so many different factors, and I think that I'm learning a lot as well with all of you, with all of the different barrels like side by side. So this is a lot of fun for me. So, but
It's a lot of fun for me.
Specifically, this one, I really liked the dark, like toasty notes with it, but I don't feel like that it covered up the fruit that you get with the Syrah. I think it very beautiful, beautiful wine and nice barrel.
Yeah, I mean, from my personal experience with these barrels and for these two wines that we tasted, the same exact barrel, I think this barrel, the first year, lends itself better to Syrah than it does Pinot Noir. And I really like it. I like that chunk. I like it being a little bit aggressive, and there's nothing about it really to me that says it's too much or it's overpowering it. With the Pinot, I think it does a little bit the first year, especially with this barrel. But I think this is really nice. I think it's kind of a nice partnership. So, what about you, Jerome? What do you think?
I was thinking exactly along the same lines. I thought this particular Leroy worked much more harmoniously with the Syrah than the Pinot. I think the structure that was maybe a bit overwhelming in the Pinot here actually is an asset in terms of layering the fruit, making it a little bit more interesting and dynamic in the palate. I also like, and I concur with Ari about the aromatics that are much more floral and that sort of fresh wood, quality. I really enjoy that, and the floral aspect. I just it's a very spicy also and deep fruit rendition. Which here there's enough, I think, material in the wine, in the fruit to stand up to the oak. So I think there's a better marriage here. Going back to your question about the bigger wines and the use of oak, I think and again I will follow up with Mary Beth on this topic, is for me the French oak has that sort of more of a discreet and subtle aromatics and less lactones than either Hungarian or American oak, but it has also more tannins. So people forget about the tannins in French oak, but it's they're definitely more, I think, present than American oak or Hungarian oak. So those tannins sometimes need a bit more time to soften up, and their techniques in terms of toasting, whether it's steaming or water bending, or the seasoning I mentioned earlier about the Allegro, to sort of soften up the impact of the toast and soften up those tannins. But it's definitely tannins structure that needs to be integrated over time. So that will be my take on this. And the bigger wine, I think, will depend also on the concentration of the wine. I think the more concentration you have, the more density in the wine, the bigger barrel you can use. If this is what you want to basically achieve as a winemaker, do you want to layer the fruit? Do you want to emphasize your fruit, or do you want just to polish it? So if your fruit is complex enough, if it's concentrated enough, you just want a little polish. So then take a low impact barrel. But if you don't have the luxury of that, if you really want more bang for your buck, if you want to really enhance the structure, then that's why there's so many variables. It's hard to have a single answer to your question.
Yeah, well, you have that Forte barrel that I've used many times in the past, and I use it for bigger wines like Petit Syrah and stuff. And I think that barrel is actually a lot more like the Leroy barrel.
Yeah.
That same
it's
kind of
more
toast.
An outlier for me, but again, it can be used, interestingly, it can be used as a positive in a blend, but.
Yeah, very good comments. Jim, Mark, anybody?
It's really interesting how each of these barrels accentuates different qualities in the wine. The first barrel that we tasted here, it really brings out the red fruit for me. But the second barrel, and I love when I get this on my Syrahs, you get this almost intense kind of chocolate coffee character. And this barrel seems to really bring that out. And I think I can't wait to be done when I can, and I haven't tasted the next two yet, but I want to blend the first two. And as part of a blend, I think this would be just a really killer wine, having these first two barrels. because the Leroy barrel, the Leroy barrel, I mean, it brings out, when I get that in some of my Syrahs, I get that chocolatey coffee thing as a background note. I love that. And this barrel just totally brings that out. It's really kind of blowing my mind. The difference, these being the same wines, the difference between these two wines from these two barrels. It's a little enlightening because I don't typically do barrel trials this way, and this has been really cool. Thanks for including me, Justin.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I agree with you. It has that kind of chocolatey, malty kind of thing on it. You know, it makes it really interesting. It really gives it, I think, a little bit more depth. And I'm sorry that you don't have a control in front of you because I've tasted the control and I know what the fruit is. And so I think it does give it it gives it more depth. And I really like that about this barrel. So nice job, Ari.
Yeah, I'll have to say, for San Diego Syrah, the only new barrel I've ever put Syrah into is Leroy.
Okay. Mark? Or did you already talk about it?
First of all, maybe I misspoke. I wasn't talking about the weakness of your Pinot. I just thought the Francois Ferrar barrel kind of overwhelmed your fruit. Whereas with your Syrah, it worked perfectly. This Leroy barrel, I agree with Jim wholeheartedly that this would be fun. This is a fun wine right here. This barrel and this fruit marriage is really, really nice. What was the bricks on this when you picked this? Remember?
Like high 24s, 24.8 or something like that.
Oh yeah, that's nice. Yeah, this is a fruit bomb. I can imagine that people are just lining up to grab this wine. This is a fun wine. Nicely done.
Well, once I open, I hope they'll line up.
Exactly. Are you selling your peanuts so you can open up?
Yeah, well, Oceanside is open with the social distancing and all that stuff. And we're open for pickup here in Escondido. But yeah, I think we're all kind of chomping at the bit to get open. You know, we all want to be back to normal. And so we're doing a lot of painting. Lots of painting. So yeah, all right. Well, I don't want to send this over 2 hours. So let's get to the third and fourth wine, and we'll go from there. We got so the next barrel is Jerome's, the Allegro barrel. Yeah, Allegro barrel. So Russo Allegro. This obviously was it's really always a standout with Pinot Noir, and so it'll be interesting to see with a bigger wine how you guys think this fares. I actually really like it with the Syrah. It's not as chunky and aggressive as some of the other barrels, but again, it integrates really fast. It's got a lot of, it accentuates the fruit, and I'll let Jerome take over, and you can talk about the barrel again and what he thinks about the impact on this wine.
Yeah, and it's an interesting side-by-side comparison with two different wines. The Pinot is obviously a little bit more aromatic and subtle. This has definitely a little bit more flesh and meatiness. I think the attributes of the Allegro here are also the same as in the Pinot to some extent. We have, I think, a very discreet, understated, and integrated version of this wine. It's well textured. I think that's one of the common attributes. It's approachable now, and there is also, I think, also a good acidity context in this wine. I picked also some milk chocolate. Maybe not as dark and structured as the Leroy, but I had that sort of a confectionery malt, caramel, milk chocolate, sort of it's a barrel also that particular toasting and seasoning we have available in puncheon. And I also find it very interesting for Syrah especially, and bigger Syrah, because I think what you're trying to retain here in a warmer climate Syrah is sort of the acidity, the freshness. And I think the larger vessel contributes to that freshness, and that's why we're doing not just barrels for Rousseau, but also concrete eggs and tanks and larger casks. And I think this is also part of the equation with Syrah and those run varietals. And we are seeing more and more winemakers and consumer going towards those larger vessels just to, again, retain that freshness. For me, we're again trying not necessarily to add structure, but trying to, again, polish the wine and make it a little fresher, having that perception of acidity being a bit more acute. So that's that will be my 2 cents here. But otherwise, I think both the barrels again are complementary from one another, and I think can really work well in the blend, especially if you consider the 18 months aging. So what we're saying here, we're at a third of the aging life of the wine. So what we're tasting here is just that that picture in time, which is not necessarily the reflection of what it will be in a year.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And it's you brought up a good point too. But we're going through our first rack, or whatever, and those are the decisions that we all have to make. And as winemakers, we don't know the whole picture yet.
Yeah.
We're guessing basically.
Yeah. It's tough.
What to do on this stuff, and that's one of the challenges of being a winemaker, is to know what to do, and or at least have a good educated guess on how much wood to throw at it, and and the whole picture of aging the wines and developing them and so forth. So very, very interesting comment about the puncheons though. The larger format stuff. Do you see it more with small production? Or
not necessarily the puncheons, even though we have a steady amount of customers every year that like the puncheons for the more tannic, they use it more as a tannin management tool. But it's unusual because it's always a pain in a cellar to deal with puncheons, and especially in a custom crush environment or smaller cellars, it's always a bit challenging logistically. But we're seeing people, even in Pinot, I'm thinking of, you're from Sonoma, Justin, so you probably know people like Segesio or Arnott Roberts. They're basically integrating now the larger vessel in their winemaking and having good success with it. So it's not just the side project that will be an inconvenience in the cellar, the design around barrels and barrel racks, but it's really part of the program. They start building pyramid of casks, they start fermenting in wood or concrete. So I think these are tools that winemakers are using, and not just a second thought. So they're now becoming, I think, a bit more prevalent.
Yeah, and those are bigger producers that you're mentioning there.
Yeah, but for Zinfandel or for I'm thinking of Kivera, for instance, with in Dry Creek with Grenache or Mauvert or Cinsault, or those or Anti with they're really working with I'm talking run varietals. I'm talking those type of varietals where it's been always tricky to find the right barrel program and the right vessel. For Pinot, it's a bit more of a clearer picture. The wine is more transparent to barrel, and we can really analyze the oak. But for Syrah, I always find sometimes the tannins get in the way, and it's hard to evaluate a vessel. So
yeah, well, it hides more, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, well, very good comments. I agree with you. I don't use a lot of large format vessels because they're a pain.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Logistically, and I totally agree with you. I mean, it's just, but I think it's cost effective, and it's also, I think you're expressing a little bit better the site, also the vineyard, I think, and you're managing tenants a bit different. It's a different ratio. It's sometimes the small barrel oak ratio, wine to oak ratio is not appropriate for all the wines, throughout, so you need to, so they just, again, I'm not really saying you have to do this. It's just a different perspective.
Sure. And I can imagine, large vessels, larger vessels for smaller wineries that really can't blend away a bunch of barrels. They don't have 100-barrel lots. They're dealing with 4 or 5 barrels or something. That's where I really see the large formats really being a plus. Yeah. So, you want to go, Mary Beth? You want to talk about this? You know this guy, right? Adam? You know Adam?
Hi, Adam. I really liked there was a freshness and like a brightness, but like a sweetness to this barrel as well. I liked the way that it maintained the acidity from the variety itself, and really good structure. I thought that this worked really well with this variety, and definitely is a component of the blend for sure.
I agree. Yeah, I think it works well with this. Actually, I mean, at this point in its life, I mean, it's got a little bit less, bang than the other barrels do, but again, it integrates really well, and it gives it a nice kind of roundness, and really is lifting on the nose, which I really like about this barrel. So. Ryan, you want to say something?
Yeah, I thought it did a really good job of balancing the wine. It might not be in your face on any certain character, but some of them were pushing it more purple fruit, which was neat to see because it is lower pH and it kind of wants to go red. But this hit that kind of fine line between the red and the purple where you have the two mingling together. And that's really beautiful.
Yeah, the chemistries on both wines were actually really similar. They're like mid 3/4s pHs, mid 6s TAs. Are about the same amount of alcohol. As that low 14s, something like that. So yeah, very similar chemistries, but completely different wines, obviously. So all right, Jim, want to say something?
It's interesting. This barrel it has the least impact at this point in time on the wine, but of all these glasses, this is the one I'd want to drink right now because it just integrates so well. It seems to bridge the gap kind of between the first two, where the first one brought out that red fruit in your face, and the second barrel was more of that spice, chocolate, kind of those different notes. This one seems to be kind of in between, and I'm loving it. That's the most empty glass I have in front of me. So, must say something about that particular barrel.
Yeah, I mean, not to discount any of the other barrels, but it is one of my favorite barrels. It always has been. It's a really cool one. I think they all actually really give some interesting character to the wines. All different, but all good. Again, just like the Pinot. So very interesting.
Right.
Mark?
We're tasting like a snapshot in time here. It's not a finish.
Go ahead, Jim. Oh.
No, I'm sorry. I jumped on top of Mark there. It's. I'm sorry. What I was going to say is like we're tasting a snapshot in time here, where it's not a finished wine. So it's like you're kind of in the middle, and these are obviously going to be blended together. But I would love to have this barrel as part of a blend. It's all. To me, it reminds me of a once-used barrel in effect, and which is always your favorite barrel that you have. You know, you're like, okay, how many once used do I have? Because I'm going to put them, you know where they're going to go, because those are always your favorite barrels.
I agree. Me too. Mark?
I was going to say, if you wanted to showcase your vineyard and show people what your vineyard's doing, this is the barrel to do it. Because of all the things, everybody else mentioned, it's muted. It's in the background. It's a polisher, as Jerome has said. I really appreciate this barrel. I think it'd be nice with my fruit, because that's what I'm trying to do, is emphasize the fruit and where I am right here. So I like this a lot. And I agree with Jim. This is of all my glasses, this is the one that's the least full. I don't have that much left in it. It's just my go-to right now.
Well, you have a whole bottle.
Yes.
Well, I think you know what, Rich? I don't think you commented on this, did you? Or did you?
No, just to add on, I think this really gets at, it lets the fruit character and the pepper character of the Syrah speak really clearly. It's kind of that blueberry pie vibe almost. Little tar, little pepper. Where I notice the oak is that it kind of rounds out the mid palate, gives a little creaminess for such a big wine. And then I really get it in the finish, where it's giving a nice firmness to the grip that without covering flavors. I think as that grip loosens, as it sits a bit longer when you're ready to release, I think it's just going to make for beautifully integrated Syrah. And it'll be a great thing to be able to think about in the blend, as far as, how much spice do I want to add to that real pure fruit character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great barrel. And like you guys all said, yeah, it's it's a little bit of an understated barrel. So it obviously is going to let the fruit show and all those, it's more about the vineyard, more about the fruit with this wine. It is a kind of a polisher, like Jerome mentioned. You have a little bit less oak impact, but it integrates really fast. And it makes you look like a rock star as a winemaker, and you're like, oh man, this is awesome right now, and 7 months old or whatever it is, So yeah, really, really nice barrel. I think the only one that I skipped here is, Ari, did you talk about it? Yeah. No? Ari, yeah.
I didn't talk, but everything pretty much everyone else has said is spot on. It's a beautiful, elegant barrel. It's very well balanced and got the beautiful finesse. And I actually was looking at it just from the color. It's the most striking and vibrant of all the different wines here on the table. And I just think it's a really beautiful barrel.
It really is. I agree with you. I think Chris or Alicia, do you want to chime in on this one, or? This is the Allegro barrel.
Exciting one.
I'm sorry?
I have to say I've never worked with Russo, and I'm really intrigued. I have some projects. Rome, if you want to talk later.
Oh yeah.
See, Jerome, you got a new client.
I know.
Also, the smallest barrel I use is 300 liter. So.
Oh, good. So what we will, now you're talking.
Seller help, because I refuse to work on the large format barrels.
You're such a wimps.
Well, as someone that only makes 2,000 to 2,500 cases, I'm almost going exclusively 500 liter. With Grenache, it wants to turn into sherry so quickly, and I'm kind of a lazy winemaker, so I like to leave everything. I don't rack anything. Once it goes in the barrel, it's there for its duration, and I find larger formats give me a little bit more leeway in terms of it doesn't have the impact on my oak. My fruit is not very expressive here. So if I were to use 60s, which I was doing for a while, it just seemed to mask my fruit. So I'm going almost exclusively 500, at least with my Grenache and my Carignan. I've got a Kuhn Moss now that my vineyard's so young that I can't use a lot of oak. So I'm going almost exclusively 500s. My Syrah I can take, and I've got them in 229s and 225s, but I'm slowly turning everything into puncheons just because I'm a lazy winemaker.
You can turn it into lawn furniture too.
I'm sorry?
You can turn it into lawn furniture too.
Exactly.
So I think that was everybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for sticking with this, you guys. I know it's been almost 2 hours, but we're on our last wine. How's that? So our last wine is the Tea and Cooperages barrel, the Fontainebleau barrel, and I know Mary Beth already talked about it a little bit, but I'll let you think what the impact, tell us what you think the impact was on this wine in comparison to the others, or just on its own, or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, definitely. So this is the same Fontainebleau barrel, same toast, long convection, medium plus toast. So it really does caramelize those sugars. It penetrates the wood deeply. I feel that especially that toast level and that style works really well with bigger, bolder wines. So I feel like it works well with your Pinot since it came from like that region, which is a lot bigger and bolder, more New World style, and the same with the Syrah. For me, I love the dark chocolate, the coffee notes, like the richness and the depth that it gives, and it gives like the different layers. I feel like it integrates pretty well, pretty quickly. But I'd also like to hear you guys' opinion as well. So I'll shut up.
No, I agree with you. I think it's a really pretty barrel. I mean, I really think, it kind of combines a lot of the best traits of all the barrels. It's an expensive barrel, but it's a really nice barrel,
Right.
So,
and it is our creme de la creme barrel, but the toast level is the same. So you can get that same toast level, that nice long convection medium plus toast, which gives those layers and gives those depths. So I really like it in terms of the impact that it gives. It is impactful, but I don't feel like it's too much. I don't feel like it overwhelms the fruit.
No, I would say it's like maybe the second most impactful barrel or third most impactful barrel out of the bunch. But really nice kind of round texture on the mouth. It doesn't mask the fruit too much. It's very disjointed. It's not disjointed. I guess it's really smooth all the way through the palate. I really like that about this barrel, and I like that. I like that about this barrel with the Pinot Noir as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start at the left. Let's go, Rich. How about you?
Yeah, this one, similar to its impact on the Pinot, I think the toastiness of this barrel is more evident, but it's certainly in a complementary way. Where the Rousseau sort of drew out more of the fruit character, this gets more into the savory character of Syrah, that meaty kind of a vibe. I thought it was pretty interesting too that for me in this glass, the char in the finish, that little charred oak note in the finish is covering more than it did in the Pinot Noir, which seems counterintuitive with the Syrah being a bolder fruit, that you're getting more of that char at present. But I would think that that's going to dovetail in over the next 12 months before you go to your final, and then give you, again, a nice blending component when you're working with what your ambassadors is going to be.
Yeah, and that's what this wine ends up being, is the Ambassador Syrah, which is the bigger oaked version of the estate version. So yeah, interesting comments. So Ari, because I think this barrel is really similar to yours. in a lot of respects.
Yeah, I would agree with Mary Beth and Rich. I mean, it's a really beautiful barrel. I like the toast. I like the little more oaky characteristic of this wine. I get what Mary Beth was saying about more of those toffee, dark chocolate, heavier oak notes that really do complement a Syrah very beautifully. And similar to what Rich was saying with making it a very beautiful, well blending wine that can actually add a lot of components that, you know, the neutral barrels won't have. So what is the collaboration of it? Is it, how much % new oak are you using on this, Justin?
Oh, for this wine will be about, the Ambassadors is about 35%.
I mean, looking at the other ones then in perspective, this one will add really nicely to the blend because, you know, the Rousseau is really light and elegant, and you need some of those ones that add that little darker, oakier characteristic. And I think this will make a nice addition to the blend.
Yeah, me too. And I kind of put it in the same kind of category as your barrel because it's got that thing, you know, it's got that chunk to it, right? I mean, for lack of a better word, maybe I should find some better descriptors, but chunky is always a good one, you know. So, but yeah, it is, and it tastes pretty good right now. I mean, you know, for only, you know, a third of the way through its life, I feel like, you know, this is going to soften out a whole bunch and be really nice and round, and will be a really cool wine in this barrel, you know. So
This barrel compared to the other ones, you know, softened the astringency a little more quicker, you know, in this time period. I'm sure it'll even out probably over time from the other barrels. But.
yeah, and it's going to go, this is a smaller blend, you know, this is only about probably 20 barrels or something. So, well, maybe I'll have to make it a little bit more because I have a lot of new wood in this lot, but it might be 24 barrels or something like that, you know. So, I mean, it's a fairly small bottling, you know, and it's really meant to be that big, kind of over the top, juicy, oaky, chunky Syrah, you know. That's what this wine is, and so I think this is going to be a really good component of that. So, nice work to you and your coopers. Where are we going? Jerome.
Oh yeah, thank you. Just like the other Tonnerie Nationale in the Pinot, I always like the sort of exotic aromatics, almost like gingerbread, Christmas spice, and of course some of the darker elements like the tar and the dark chocolate. So I think it's, you know, it's very interesting aromatically, obviously structured. I will agree with Rich that the finish, you know, is almost more rusted flavors and smoky than the Pinot version. But I kind of like it. It goes, I think, better with this type of wine, you know, that sort of meaty Syrah and the Pinot from Orcut further north. I think it's, I kind of like that sort of a barbecue finish, and you know, it's really almost decadent and very complex aromatics, as I said earlier, that I found consistent with the other the barrel for Pinot. Again, we're trying to enrich the blend, and having that spice box, I think, is key.
I agree. Jim?
All right. Well, we're getting to the point where I just make stuff up mostly, but yeah, no, this actually, no, I you know, you got to think of a barrel as it's just a piece of your toolkit. So each barrel contributes something, and you got to, and when you taste them by themselves, you're like, okay, do I want this in there? I most definitely want this barrel in the mix. It gives you this kind of barbecue, spicy background, kind of meatiness that you want in Syrah. And it's interesting, when I poured this, when I first poured this glass, it was the most similar to at least on the nose, to what I got from the same wine, the Pinot Noir in the same barrel. So it's like it contributed kind of the same thing, you know? So I don't know, it's, I'd like it in the blend. So we'll keep it in there, Justin, all right?
Okay, yeah, we'll keep it in the blend. How about Mark?
It's almost as if this is a completely different wine in this barrel. To me, the Allegro, it emphasized the fruit. It was more, and the Loire, it was more fruit driven. This is the vineyard. This one takes it to a brambly. I get more coffee notes, soy sauce, black teas. It's almost like it's a completely different wine. And again, what Jim's saying is this would be awesome in a blend, because this would give your underpinning of what people like. I've got a lot of wine club members that want me to make these big monstrous, you know, Central Coast Syrahs, and I keep telling them, I don't know if I could do that here, you know, but this barrel might get me there. It's really interesting. It's kind of like the Goldilocks. It's got great mouthfeel. It's got a nice finish. It gives me a nice nose. This has been really fun to learn about these barrels. This is fun. It's a fun barrel.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, this is a fun exercise. You know, I know it was a lot to kind of coordinate and get everybody on the same page, but I'm glad you guys all spent the couple hours and did this with me, because I think not only for the reps from the cooperages and for us as winemakers, I think it's a really interesting project, and it's fun to hear people's comments, because, you know, my comments are, unless I'm talking to myself out loud, you know, are all in my head, you know, when I taste through these things. So it's nice to kind of hear it out loud and go through it and kind of dissect each thing. So I think we have 2 more speakers, maybe did Rich? I don't think you commented on this barrel, right?
Yeah, I started this one.
Oh, you started. Okay, so then we're at Ryan.
Yeah, no, most of my comments have covered, but I really agree. This one expressed a lot more of a meat component, a lot more of a spice. I almost get kind of a summer sausage on the palate, and it leads into that more rustic finish for me. It was kind of plum pit forward. Also does seem to be either the most dominant barrel or second most, where it's really guiding the wine pretty heavily, which isn't a bad thing. It's still expressing a Syrah, but it's, like Mark said, completely different than the other 3. And it would be really nice in there. It adds a little more depth and structure and character.
No, I agree. I agree with you. I think all our palates are probably a little shot, and we're probably ready to get off to some maybe some food or something. So, was there anybody else that didn't comment on this barrel that wants to? No, I think that.
If I can, like, I'll get a barrel if I can get a trip to Boulder and Fontaine.
Well, you'll have to butter up Jerome or Mary Beth or one of these guys, you know, try to do that. But hey, maybe we can just have some kind of some parting shots. If you guys want to have, let's just go through everybody and just say, you know, well, I want to first thank everybody for attending and joining this thing. I think it was really cool. I'd like to do another one next year, maybe with 2 different wines. Maybe we can do like a Sangiovese and maybe a Bordeaux or something like that, and kind of keep this going, because I think it's really cool for the fans that are watching, even if they're not tasting the barrels, they're hearing some really good comments from you about what barrels do to wines and how they impact them, and as winemakers, what we do, how we use barrels, you know, to try to get to some end goal, right? I mean, that's the whole trick. We want to produce the best product that we can and get that out to the consumers and have them buy it and buy more and make a living so that we can keep doing this every year, right? because that's the trick. We all love this industry, and we want to do well and make enough money to be able to farm next year. This is basically how it rolls. So I'll thank you all, and I really appreciate it. This was really cool. It was a really awesome exercise, and I loved all the barrels, and I love the comments. And so I will let Rich do his first parting shot here.
Sure. I think from a consumer standpoint, something like this, it has huge value, because I think people often, when they come across wines that are resultant from, putting these kinds of things together, may not have a full realization of what is going into that price tag that they might be a little bit shocked by when they see it. There's all of these things impact pricing, and to get a wine like the Ambassador Syrah that typically shows, a real sense of place, and also really carefully selected wood tones and great depth of character, that it's not cheap to make a wine like that. It's not just coming off a million case line where it's a blend of vintages and things are sort of done in large phases. It's great for consumers to be able to see the artistry from so many different levels that goes into this. But just hearing the barrel reps talk about what coopers go through, and a yard full of staves that are being watered in a certain way, and all of the things that go into that, and that these things all come at a cost, yet it's a worthy cost because it contributes so much to the final product. I had a blast tasting through all of these. I'm going to pass these bottles on to some of the home winemakers in the area and let them taste through and see what those different impacts are. So as they're thinking about how they put their wines together, they can keep those kinds of things in mind.
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate you coming on. You want to go across? Ari, you want to?
I just want to thank you, Justin, very much for putting this all together and getting us all here. I think it's a great way to open the dialogue with everybody, with the different styles and types of wines that are being made all the way down the Central Coast, and all the different potentials, because you and all the other winemakers in the area have the very difficult task of figuring out, of the hundreds of barrels that are available, what are the best ones to go with your wine. And I feel very honored and privileged that you've chosen Loire to be a part of your group of coopers. And I know with everyone else too, you have to make the right decision, and sometimes you don't have the ability to do these trials. So I think what we've done today has been a really nice thing, teaching and learning and showing people the different impacts, and how whether one's very, very oaky or nice and beautiful and refined, the pros and cons to both. Because, a really oaky barrel could definitely scare someone away. But when you stop and think that, okay, that's only 20% of my wine, oh, you don't have to be so stressed out. And, it's just a really great learning experience for everyone, and a great opportunity. So again, I thank you, Justin, and everybody who's on the panel today for showing up and tasting and doing this with us.
Thank you so much, Ari. We love your barrels, and yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
All the chunk included.
All the chunk. That's not a bad thing, by the way. It's it's not a bad thing. Ryan?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was really neat to go through all these different barrels, especially on two separate wines, and see the similarities and differences. Learned a lot, especially from all the barrel reps that took their time to be here. And yeah, I hope whoever is watching this learned a few things and maybe appreciates a little more where wine comes from.
Hey, thanks a lot, Ryan. I appreciate it. Mary Beth?
I just want to thank you also. This was awesome. And I want everybody else to realize that that barrel people are not necessarily in competition with each other. We're friends. Like, I know Ari, she's super cool, and I'm happy to meet you, Jerome. And it just goes to show that not every barrel is the same. It's not like one French barrel is the same as another French barrel. Each cooper has different seasoning techniques. They have different toasting techniques, and there's a place for, you know, more than one style of barrel in your cellar, and I think it's really evident doing this tasting, and I appreciate that you gave us the opportunity to get together and taste together and kind of see, because we as barrel reps, we kind of get like almost like the house palate like winemakers get, you know. If you're only drinking your own wine all the time, you kind of like miss some things sometimes. So it's eye-opening to be able to taste other coopers as well, because when I visit with clients, they always want to take me over to my barrel and taste, you know, like our barrels together. But, you know, no, I want to know what other people are doing too, because I feel like it is a spice blend, it is a component, and it makes a wine unique. So thank you, this was awesome, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary Beth, I appreciate it. Chris, Alicia?
I have to say thank you very much. The comments from everybody, and it was awesome. So, yeah.
I just want to say thank you, Justin. You've always been great, and I know Jim can attest to this too, in the teaching at Miracosta and like the evolution of the San Diego wine scene. Justin's always been really good about always welcoming us all into their cellar. I know when I brought my class, when I started teaching 10 years ago, it was almost like a home winemaker thinking. The students were home winemakers, backyard growers thinking about becoming winemakers, and now we're getting people who want like much more professional, much larger scale thoughts about San Diego wine industry. And I know when I brought my class there, I taught, let's see, 2 years ago we went there. We would have gone a month ago, except for COVID. And Justin tasting my students through the cellar some of them said that was their favorite part of the class, not just because we were sampling wine, but because they had no idea the impacts of a new barrel versus a neutral, and they thought a French barrel was a French barrel. So I hope when we do this in the future, maybe we can involve, you know, some consumers can do some tasting on their end.
Sure. I'm always happy to help, you know that. So thank you for coming, both of you. Jerome?
Yes, Justin, it was a pleasure being here with you today, with all the panelists. Very informative, very educational. I think the educational part of this business is very important, especially for consumers, because they don't necessarily know what goes into this particular winemaking process, all the different decisions that are key to make a better product. I think what we often ignore is the feedback of these consumers. Sometimes winemakers believe they can make the wine they want and then sell it to whoever buys it, but it's not as simple. And as my coopers need my feedback when I travel and taste wines, they need my feedback so that we can make a barrel that is more tailored to the wines. I think the consumers also bring a lot of positive feedback to Justin and to other winemakers. And I think, you know, what I've seen over the last 25, 30 years in this business in the US is that consumers are getting much more sophisticated, much more educated. And that's why I think, you know, this initiative, I think, is great to achieve that goal. And lastly, I just wanted to also emphasize again, the education, as I did in the past with different community colleges, doing seminars or presentation on barrels or you know, the history of certain coopers in France dating back from Louis XIV. You know, it's all very part of that experience, you know, and learning more about the business. So again, thank you for all the great comments today, and Justin for putting this together. This was priceless.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jerome. Really appreciate you coming on. Jim? Jim? You want to say?
Yeah, I'm unmuting myself. Yeah, I just want to thank all of you. I've been Zoomed to death during this COVID thing, a couple of these things a week, maybe 3 or 4. And this has been by far the most interesting and informative one that I've actually been on. That the consumers need to, a lot of times we're trying to sell people wine. This was purely educational. And I just, people don't really understand what a barrel does to wine. And I think this has been so informative for the people watching. I just really appreciate you putting this together, Justin, and also being a part of, the community we got down here in Southern California. Having you here has been, been great. So all you Coopers, I love your barrels. Come by and drop off a catalog. We'll certainly talk. Everything here has been stellar. I probably can't afford your stuff, but we'll certainly consider it. But really cool. Everybody here has been contributed well, and Justin, thanks so much for putting this together, and again, thanks for including me.
Thanks for coming on, Jim. I really appreciate it. This has been a really fun experience. So the last one to kind of sign off, Mark, and then I'll just have some parting comments.
Well, first of all, thank you, Justin, for actually making me think that I'm a winemaker. I just consider myself a former school teacher and an amateur winemaker. And as Jim Hart once said, I think I've just strung together a bunch of happy accidents. So I'm honored to be on this panel for openers. The second thing is I really didn't realize what barrels can do for a wine. This has been really, really educational for me. Each one of these barrels contributes certain things that I find really appealing. I really like what everyone did, and considering, as Jim said earlier, this is a 6-month snapshot. And just in the glass, just in the course of this time period of 2 hours, you go back and revisit these, and what I found in one barrel I didn't really appreciate, all of a sudden it's completely different, and I wish I could redo my notes and go, but. So this has been a really, really great education on what barrels do. The spice box, I've been hearing about it for years, but I really haven't truly understood it, and I think I'm kind of getting it a little bit. So I'm hoping that you'll invite me next year for this, because this has been really, really educational. Thank you so much.
Of course, you're welcome. Thanks for coming on. I just want to thank you all once more for coming on and doing this. This was really cool. It was really cool, and it was really interesting to hear your guys' comments. I thought no matter what, all the ones showed really well. I mean, we're just kind of picking it apart, as winemakers and people in the business and so forth. But all the wines showed really, really well. You guys all have a really, really good product. Even though I have the most experience with Jerome, I think the other 3 Coopers really showed well too. And I appreciate all your guys' comments. And thank you so much again for coming on. And I will do another trial for this next year, probably 2 different wines and maybe some different barrels. But kind of the same format, because I think this went really well. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And
cheers. This was fun.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers, you guys.
Sure.
All right.
Cheers,
Well, I'm going to log off, but thank you all, and I'll be in touch, okay?
Have a good weekend.
Hey.
Cheers.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.